should introduce, like, since this is
Well,
our
this is
first
probably-
welcome.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
welcome to
Mum and Dad Musos. M.A.D. Musos. This is a
M.A.D.
podcast for mums and dads who are musos, who are struggling and to, I don't know. That's not a good thing.
No, they are like people that go through the mechanics of everyday life and don't get to do the things that they enjoy. Like,
And who play an instrument, any instrument whatsoever. I'm a guitarist myself. Elvis is a bass player. And we're just going to be talking about equipment, interests. We're going to preview we're going to analyze an album every podcast and an artist.
absolutely.
And we're going to be looking at interviewing different mums and dads, musos. We're going to have a segment called Show Us Your Rigs. And that's going to be looking at whatever rig you've got, whether it be bass, guitar, drums, etc. And just showcasing Melbourne, or just showcasing anyone who is a mum and dad and who is a muso, and just looking at different practice ideas and techniques to actually help, like, the limited time we have as working parents to actually play our instruments. Yeah.
And particularly in this COVID situation, it's, any relief is good.
Any relief is good.
It's just
Interesting choice of words.
Yeah, look, it's yeah. Any relief, but it's yeah. We both know, Steph and I both know what it's like to have families and to not have time for your hobbies, the passions that you enjoy, that kind of get you through everyday life, because everyday life can be quite challenging.
Yeah.
Particularly with families. So hopefully we can lighten up your day.
And give you some ideas in terms of practice, gear, like the whole thing about, one thing I learnt, I've spent too much money on equipment unnecessarily, and a friend of mine who's a professional guitarist, he really showed me that it doesn't matter what guitar, how good your amp is, how good your pedals are, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And he didn't actually intentionally show me. He basically had a modeler hooked up to a computer, and he was showing me how good it sounded. And I played his guitar through the modeler, through the speakers, and it sounded like me. And then he grabbed the guitar and he just played, and it sounded completely different. It sounded like him, and there was so much girth to the note in comparison to when I played. It was bizarre. It's almost like he switched something else on, but it was exactly the same sound, and that was very eye-opening for me in terms of me. I don't need to buy anything else, and the journey has sort of stopped. It's really all in your fingers. Like all these great guitarists say, it's all in your fingers. It's 100% true. It's nothing to do with the gear you've got.
No.
Ideally, have decent gear, but
which friend is that?
His name is Dave Leslie from the Baby Animals. I didn't want to name drop.
No, but I mean, it'd be nice to have him on one day.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah,
if you'd be interested.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'd have to ask him. But yeah, it was just,
journey.
it was so eye-opening. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine. It's like, we've read about people that have played and bought Eddie Van Halen's rigs.
Yeah.
They don't sound anything like him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is probably good segue into
to Eddie. We'll get
into
I reckon we get to Eddie a bit after.
Yeah.
Because this is still the introduction bit.
Yeah.
Because we're introducing ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
So what's your journey, bro? Tell everyone.
I first was struck by music in my teens, I guess. I've always loved music, particularly, influenced by Elvis Presley, maybe. I mean, to be honest, that was one of the Beatles. My father used to put on Elvis Presley. He was obsessed with Elvis Presley, hence the name. And the Beatles, and then as I got into teens, it was, Queen and all those kind of bands, Bruce Springsteen. And then mid-teens, I discovered Eddie Van Halen.
We will be talking about
which
later.
Yeah. And then I have to admit, everything changed when I discovered Van Halen, because growing up we hear pop music, which is your Bruce Springsteen and U2 and all those, and there's a formula. And when I heard Van Halen, it was a game changer for me. And so I took up bass at about 19, 20, I think, when I was living up in Wodonga doing a course up there, and I met this guy, Jack, who was a guitarist, and he just introduced me to Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, like in depth, not just, Stairway to Heaven or, another brick in the wall. It was focusing inside their music, their albums, and that was another game changer. So, I got exposed to John Paul Jones from Zeppelin, and that's where my journey of bass playing began. I remember being in my bedroom trying to play rock and roll. And then, trying to learn Dazed and Confused, which was a mammoth task in itself. And so bass, kind of became the thing for me. And then you've got all sorts of stuff like jazz and funk, and that journey just continues, trying to play. I played a little bit of piano, which helped my bass playing a lot. I had a really good teacher. I learned a little bit of guitar, but it was always about the bass. And, I got married, had kids, and time was limited, but, tried to pick it up where I can. And, my life's changed now, and now I have greater opportunity and time to play music, and, and I'm pretty grateful to be able to even be doing this podcast with Steph. So
likewise.
Yeah, like it's just, and we're hoping this is another journey, with music and all aspects and facets of music. So that's kind of it for me. I'm mad about music. I love music therapy, and we're hoping maybe we can make that part of these podcasts, just because it helps people.
It's helped us.
It has in the past, is presently, and will continue in the future. And that's not just us, it's for everyone. Like a universal language. So, yeah, special. Music is special. What about you, Steph?
For me, my dad, when I was little, bought my brother and I a guitar each, and I used to drag that thing around the house. I think I used to beat it and strum it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I think in early primary school, they put my brother and I in this group lesson, and I was learning single note things and my brother was learning chords, but I was too busy being a clown, and I used to get kicked out of the class all the time.
I can relate to that.
And so I never really learned anything then. But music, well, I'm just trying to think what the most significant moment was in terms of music itself for me, hearing what. And I think it was probably the Jacksons,
Oh,
hearing Michael Jackson.
nice.
That was probably the most significant musical when my ears propped up and interested me, and that was in primary school. And then post that, I think the interest in guitar hit when I hit secondary school, but I wasn't allowed to play. Crazy mother.
That's tough. Yeah, that's.
While I wasn't allowed to play guitar throughout my high school thing, at one stage, I would always do it at school if ever I got the chance to get my hands on a guitar that the school had. I'd always muck around, but I only ever knew like 3 chords or whatever. And that little guitar that was a 3/4 size, which I still have, was my mum had forgotten that it was underneath my bed.
Wow.
And so I used to pull it out and muck around and stuff, but that was more in my later teens. But I just used to play by ear. I used to tune it by ear, and it had, I think it was what string was frayed? It was the D string was frayed completely, so I couldn't use the D string, so anything I worked out would be around those other strings.
Wow. That's embedded in your memory, yeah?
Yeah. And
Frayed
so
D
I used to
string.
sneak it out whenever I could, which was rarely, and just muck around on it. And when I went to uni, if I could get my hands on a guitar there, they were just all these acoustics, nylon strings, and I try get my hands on there. At high school, I was forced to play the tuba
Wow.
from year 7 to
Oh.
year 12.
Still tuning your ears.
And so I used to use that as an excuse to go down to the music rooms, and I'd jump on the drums if I could too. I loved the drums.
Wow.
So I used to muck around in there and hide down. And truancy was something that I became pretty good at.
Yeah.
Kind of, not really, but I ended up always getting caught. But after a lot of truancy, but there was just a hunger to try and play music. And in my teens, it was the band U2 that really had a significant effect on me, and Whitney Houston.
Oh wow, what a voice.
I got to a point where I wasn't allowed to listen to music, and I had this little transistor 2-speaker radio which I used to hide underneath my pillow and just listen to whatever radio station would play stuff like that at night. Yeah.
Wow.
And just have it coming through my pillow and just listen to that. And my mother had a transistor radio in the kitchen when she was cooking, and I had to do my homework at the dining room table, and so it was 3MP, I think.
Wow.
And the most significant moment in terms of guitar that happened for me was a Santana song came on 3MP.
Which one?
Could have been Black Magic Woman. And when I heard that note,
Distinctive
I think it
tone,
was.
Yeah,
I think it was
tone
Black Magic
he's
Woman.
got.
When I heard that note, that cut through like my soul. It's like, oh my goodness, that's what I want to do.
Wow. But there's those moments, yeah?
Yeah.
Capture that.
Yeah.
And,
That's the instrument. That's what I want to do. And that's, I left home at 23, and a friend of mine wanted me to play bass in a band with him.
That's cool.
I just knew like a bunch of chords on the guitar, and ideas that I had written myself. You know what I mean? But from that little guitar, which I could play something after if you want.
Yeah, sure.
And I basically played bass for a year in that band, and that was learning covers. We played some gigs too. It was fun. Like, it was a real eye-opener. The first gig I played was for a birthday party at the Bendigo Hotel in Johnson Street, and that was, it was became an all-out brawl because most of the Ballarat footy team were there. And we had sculling comps, and we were playing Zeppelin, we were playing all that sort of stuff.
Everyone was just
everyone going off. And the PA came down, and Sarah was at the gig. She was my wife, but was just my girlfriend at the time. And she knew I wanted to do music, and this was the first time she saw me play, and this is what I want to do. And she's like, "You really want to do this?" Like, we had to jump off the stage and break up a fight and all that sort of stuff.
You'd be thinking, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
I can deal with this."
Yeah. And so that was all covers, but we did that for a year. I played bass, and then I just had to start learning guitar, and that's when I started learning guitar.
So you're pretty much in your mid-20s.
Yeah, 24.
Wow.
Yeah. That's when I started practicing and learning.
And it was Carlos Santana's note, his tone.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Through.
What a great tone to
but when I was
be mesmerised by.
In that time, when I first moved out of home, I bought one of those cheap guitar amp packages.
Yep.
And I didn't know any scale patterns or anything. I used to play by ear. And
that's a good thing.
The guys who at uni, Hendrix really cut through like no one's business. We used to, again, truancy. There was myself and another guy and two girls. We used to drive off and go to the beach and all that sort of stuff when I was at uni. And we'd listen to Hendrix driving while. But in that bedroom in the share house I was living in when I moved out of home, I used to try mimic Hendrix, Santana, and Gilmour. Gilmour had a profound effect on me as well in that period. Yeah.
God's guitarist is his nickname.
Yeah.
What great influences, man.
Yeah.
What a nice range, broad range.
Yeah. And I found out an interesting fact about Hendrix, that his birth date is my mum's birthday.
Oh.
His death date is my birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean shit, but that's cool.
Anything linked to the great guitarist?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't play like Hendrix, but...
Oh, look, we use them as great inspiration, though,
exactly.
These players, so they drive us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man.
In terms of Eddie, I was always blown away by Eddie. Through the 80s, like, I was aware of Van Halen, and that was the only band I liked of that genre. I didn't like any of the other bands.
The guitar bands, I agree with you. Like, I like Bruce Springsteen, but he wasn't a guitar band.
No, not at all. So, yeah. There was no one else who was.
I remember in high school.
The only band. Oh, sorry.
No. I was just saying. I remember in high school when this kid named Duncan Quilty, that was his name.
Yeah.
Gave me a VHS tape of Live Without a Net.
Yep.
He goes, "Go home and listen to this." And I've just put it in there. I watched him go on. I was actually mesmerised.
Yeah.
And I just gone, what is this? That was the game changer for me.
Yep.
Like, like you had those 80s bands like U2 and
U2
Bruce Springsteen, all those guys, and Queen. What can I say about Queen? But Eddie, to hear Eddie and Van Halen doing what he's doing, that was the beginning, I'm sure, for like you, and that was another journey for me.
Yeah.
Of listening to Van Halen.
Yeah.
I became obsessed with the whole band, particularly Eddie.
Yeah.
When you saw him do Eruption live.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gobsmacked.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And could you imagine?
And when you hear Eddie's Eruption, you can see it on YouTube. I can't remember exactly where. Just in the studio, they're them tracking him, just his guitar and nothing else.
Oh. And I think the ambient mics picked them up.
Yeah, the ambient
mics in that studio.
Yes, it's nothing but him, but when you hear that track, it's phenomenal. It's like...
there are some things in life, like, you can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like whether it's artists of whatever, whether it's people that paint, whether it's people that sculpture, whether it's people that play piano, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but there are people you look at their work or listen to their work, and you got this kind of connection with, I don't know, from another source somewhere. And Eddie's one of those. Like Jimi Hendrix, he was wired as well. They're wired through something that you can't put your finger on, but you can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie, what about the isolated track for Hot for Teacher?
Isolated track, that's the word. Yeah.
What about the isolated track for Hot for Teacher? That's something that, I know you said this as well. I can't stop listening to that. And when I listen to it, I'm mesmerised. It's almost like someone takes over his body when he plays.
Yeah.
And
it's a direct channel to something.
Yeah, to something very powerful. And
speaking of therapy, that's therapy, listening to it.
Oh, like even now thinking about it, I actually, it kind of stops me in my tracks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like Eddie's.
But like for me, therapy, speaking of music therapy.
Oh, he's unbelievable.
For me, my musical therapy growing up was U2, Whitney.
Oof. Oh mate, she's unbelievable, man.
And even early teens, I'd say Gunners. That first album, man.
You have to admit, as much as I'm not a fan of
Axl,
as a band, as a collective,
Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah, it's an incredible album,
which we'll have to review one day.
Yeah, and Slash is great.
Yeah,
you've seen Slash live.
Yeah.
I think I've seen him live with Miles Kennedy. Great, he's fantastic. But I struggle a little bit with Axl Rose's. It's just the way he conducted himself. I think more than anything is what I struggle with.
His ego,
massive ego. Not turning up to a concert and not performing for whatever reason. I mean, that's tough on the crowd. People that have paid and we've all got issues. Everyone's got issues in life, but come on, man. Sometimes you just got to step up.
Yeah.
Him and Slash were very good though as songwriters. Amazing combination.
Absolutely.
But once again, I guess we could probably lead into, speaking of Van Halen.
So, you got to talk about.
Because we're going to go the other way, aren't we? We're going to
Van Halen.
Then that Van Halen is the thing that we finish on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is it the time for the what are we
showcase
our gear,
our favourite instrument. Like eventually we'll showcase other people's gear and their equipment, but at the moment we're just going to showcase. The way I see it is like your number one instrument. Like you found your number one bass, I've found my number one guitar. After many years.
How about a run through, Steph, on your
my favourite guitar?
Your baby.
Okay. This is a Warmoth guitar, Warmoth strap that I put together. I had gone through a journey of many different guitars to get to this one, and this is the one I've settled on, and that I'm not going to change, or this is where it's at now. And especially considering after watching my friend play and not realizing, I knew, but you get obsessed with equipment, but this is where it stops. This is Warmoth is a parts company from the States, and you buy the body and the neck from them. You can buy the whole thing in parts, and then you put it all together. But I just bought the body and the neck. The neck is the fattest neck they can make. It's 1 inch thick all the way through. It's roasted or torrefied maple. It's stainless steel frets. It's a swamp ash body. I chose a swamp ash body speaking of Eddie, Eddie's main famous guitar, we'll talk about that after, was Swamp Ash as well. Well, was it Ash? Yeah. And but I based my design on a 54 Strat. That's why I got the Swamp Ash body, and the chunky neck, the big baseball bat. Because I played one in Fretted Instruments, which was an old music store in Melbourne, which was from such a long time ago. It's like 15, 20 years ago it was there. And they had a 54 there, and I asked the guy, can I play it? And when I picked it up and just played it acoustically, I was too afraid to even plug it in or anything. It was $36,000 back then. And this 54, I was just gobsmacked by the way it felt and played, and it just blew me away. And so that was my benchmark to trying to make a guitar feel like that and even acoustically sound like that. And because I don't have the 54, I can't tell you if it does. But it feels good enough and it plays good enough.
One day.
The pickups are Hinman's Woodstock 69s. And this pickup is a Seymour Duncan parallel axis trembucker, which is, again, I went through a whole heap of bridge pickups and settled on this one. I've even tried other ones of the same make. It's the original parallel axis trembucker, and this one particular pickup just sounds awesome. So it's going to stay in there forever. The scratch plate's just off eBay. It's mahogany. The trem, this has been on... This is a Man-Made USA. It's the guy who designed the PRS trem, and that's the only thing I like from PRS is their trems. And so I got the same trem and just Spurzl locking tuners, and it's a nice guitar. I was going for something that was very clean. That has just that Strat sound. Just if you're interested in what I'm plugged into, I'm just plugged into Elvis's amp, which is a Marshall Origin.
Origin 5.
5-watt amp, and you'll hear some pedals afterwards, which is just a Maxon, what is it? SD9 sonic distortion, and also a exotic soul driven. I like that clean sort of Stratty sound. And just that crystal clean. One guitarist who I sort of base my clean sound, or not really, I try to, but I like the sound of his guitar sound. I love Strat players. Eric Johnson's clean sound just is sublime.
Does he use a Fender?
Oh, how about if I tune? Hey?
Does he use Fender?
Yeah, he uses Fenders for clean.
Yeah. That's pretty much the standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's very tasteful.
So it's got a nice clean, and it's got a different sort of... Yeah.
Very tasteful.
That's the middle pickup, and I like in between that chiminess. There are no switches on here. I don't split this pickup at all or anything. And then when you get into this. So it has that. It has that. a nice sweet sort of sustain. Yeah. That's my...
I mean, that's a basic amp, yeah? It's nothing fantastic, but you make that thing really sing through it, man. It's
That's something we can talk about in terms of... That's a simple amp, yeah? It's nothing. And the pedals are just... They're pedals, yeah? They're not...
Yeah.
It's
a $400 or $500 amplifier, new.
Yeah, it's about... The biggest thing, I think, is your fingers and how you EQ things.
Absolutely.
Like, my first port of call with amps generally has been to keep the bass 50%, crank the mids a bit, and keep the treble 50%. And you'll find that a lot of amps will respond quite well. You'll get quite a nice sound out of that. But in this amp, I found that because it's a small 10-inch speaker, I think.
Yeah, this is a 10.
Yeah, it was very mid-heavy. So I sucked the mids a bit and a bit bright. I sucked the treble a bit and cranked the bass a bit. Yeah, to give it a bit more body. And the presence I brought down to about 25%.
I love the tone, man.
Yeah.
And it just, you kind of demonstrate just some, knowledge in EQing, some minor EQing and the difference it can make.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's an art form in itself. So something that I still play with, even though I'm a bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's gold.
Another thing to do also with guitars, just is in between these two, what I do, I can see if it works with this. Oh, I want distortion. I've turned the tone down completely off and put it in between these two pickups. You kind of get that mid kind of squawk for that. As opposed to just the bridge humbucker. It's a lot more raw. And then a bit more expressive. Yeah, so play with your instrument tones and volumes and all that sort of stuff as well.
Absolutely.
And you can get a lot out of the guitar. I love that sound for like a expressive sort of solo sound.
Mate, I love it.
Yeah.
And you just goes to show you don't need the expensive stuff, so...
No. I'd be happy to record with that.
Yeah. Good time.
It'll be interesting to see how it came because just these two mics are picking up that sound, so it'll be interesting to see how it translates in the video.
Thanks for showing us the rig, man. Your rig and, or the guitar and...
Yeah. My rig's another story.
Yeah. But you've just demonstrated how, with your own guitar into a moderate amplifier, what you can do with it, with a couple of pedals. That's awesome. Now
you, sir.
Well, I've got a Fender Jazz, a 2010 Fender Jazz. It's based on Rush's bass player / singer Geddy Lee. Look, I respect Rush. I think they're an incredibly talented band. I wasn't really into them. I stumbled upon this bass at the...
Rush out for their albums?
No. I picked this up at the Bass Centre in South Melbourne.
We went and tried. That was the...
Yeah. So g'day to Mel and all the boys there at Bass Centre in South Melbourne. So this bass is it's got a fairly slim neck, It's got a maple neck with the block inlays, as you can see. An older wood body. These pickups are Seymour Duncan Antiquities.
They're not stock, are they?
No.
Yeah.
This, I was a bit lucky, and someone had bought this and
Modded.
Yeah, modded these pickups with your standard Seymour Duncans with these Antiquities. So it's got that kind of vintage element to it. So you've got the volume knob for each pickup and a tone control. It's relatively light, very comfortable.
How long have you had it for?
Since probably 2010, 11.
We compared it to a number of bases. We compared it to Warwick, Schecter.
Yeah, we did, and it's got a badass tube bridge on it, which is a decent quality bridge. It holds tune well. It's a really nice bass, and it wasn't that expensive, and I love it. And it is my go-to bass, and it's quite versatile. You can. I've got a Rumble 25 practice amp, which has got a 10-inch driver in it, and that's really cool. And from memory, they've been okay. So the EQ's been set at like bass at 1 o'clock, the mids at about 10, and the treble at about 9. To suit this kind of versatile sound. So it's quite punchy. It's
Don't play any covers, or else we'll get copyrighted infringement.
Oh, that was my little bass that I made up. It goes like this.
With YouTube can be very funny.
Did you think that was one I just wrote recently? It's really it's a beautiful feeling bass. It's easy to play. I'm not a very good slapper, but it has a good setup for slap.
That's debatable.
It's like it's got that. It's just so versatile. It's it's got the big sound too. It's got everything. It's
actually what drew you to a jazz bass? What?
Well, admittedly, I love the P.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll hear the P bass on the Fender P on just about all the albums in I think the late 50s and all the 60s and 70s. That mids that punch through and amazing. But the jazz is very versatile.
Who was the player that influenced you to get a jazz?
Well, funny you should mention that, Steph. It was the great John Paul Jones. Listening to all his work, and it was all done on I think it was a 60. I don't know if it was a 63 or 65. We're going to have to check this. I've forgotten. Jazz bass, and he did predominantly all the Zeppelin work, particularly the first 4-5 albums on his jazz. And what better role model than John Paul Jones? So he had a beautiful tone, beautiful groove, and when I saw this and picked it up, found it so easy to play, and with a great tone. Going through
we're going through a Mark rig.
A Mark bass rig,
which is what you have.
210 cab with a Mark Little 3. I think it's a 500 watt head, 600 watt head. And I also picked that up at Bass Centre in South Melbourne. And yeah, it's an amazing sound. But yeah, there's a lot to be said for jazz. But I mean, between a jazz and a P, you can do anything. And let's face it, all basses are modelled around those two basses.
Absolutely.
So all your modern, forms of bass came from those two, particularly the P. It all started with the P bass, and then, not long after Leo Fender brought out the jazz, and so so let's groove on, man.
Sounds beautiful.
It's a gorgeous bass.
Any other players that sort of played jazz bass that you really, or was it just primarily?
Look, I've
John
in the
Paul
later
Jones?
years, I've had a bit of a listen to Geddy Lee because I actually watched a documentary recently. I think it was on either Netflix or Stan about Rush, and my goodness, I was absolutely gobsmacked because he started playing jazz later on in Rush, and he's phenomenal. His ability to sing and play, and his tone's beautiful. And well, there's all sorts. I think Larry Graham was using a jazz bass early on.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's with Warwick now.
Yeah, he is.
So,
Marcus Miller.
Marcus Miller, which you have. Do you have the Marcus Miller bass?
Oh, I've got a Sire Marcus Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's still based on it. There's a lot of players that use but my main one was John Paul Jones.
Yeah,
he was the man. People like Jack Bruce and Jack Bruce uses the Warwick, but I think early on he may have used the jazz. I'll have to check that.
Well, the funny thing for me, my number one first influence was Santana. He doesn't play Strats.
No, that's interesting. But I mean,
Hendrix,
he's a PRS. But was he a PRS from way back, or
used to play Yamaha SGs and SGs, Gibson SGs. He started on. But I love the sound and the tone. But I always gravitated to Strat players. I think the first one was Hendrix, and Gilmore was another one, and Eric Johnson,
and
Richie Kotzen.
Should we mention
Eddie? No.
The great blues player,
Buddy?
Stevie
Ray Vaughan. Oh my goodness. Heck. I should be shot. I
think we have to stop the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm about to have heart failure.
But yeah, Stevie Ray. Oh my goodness. I don't play like Stevie Ray.
No,
but his sound and his tone. He's.
Yeah, I know. It's look, I'm a bass player, but I also love guitar, and
he's on the same level as Eddie.
Steve,
yeah,
Stevie
and
Ray.
Hendrix, same level. There are very few guitarists that have changed the musical landscape, that have changed the world. Jimmy, Stevie Ray, Eddie, and I don't think there's been really anyone since Eddie. The closest thing I'd say to changing the musical landscape was Tom Morello.
With his ability to play, to utilize effects. And if anyone doesn't know who Tom Morello is, he's from
Rage
Against the Machine, and he also did an album or two with Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, who sadly is no longer around. But yeah, Tom Morello's he's right up there. We're going to talk about Van Halen.
Van Halen 1, the first album.
Boy, oh boy.
Well, you said Eruption, so.
Well, what are we?
That album.
I'm gobsmacked.
In '78, just turned on so many levels, on an artistic level, on a sonic level, on a stylistic level. it turned the music world upside down, the rock world upside down.
Yeah, particularly on how they
It
approach their live shows from
Yeah.
Van Halen 1 onwards.
It was as pivotal as Hendrix
Yeah.
coming onto the scene.
Well, if you look at people's reactions,
Mm.
I remember reading that Ozzy Osbourne of Black Sabbath, Van Halen were supporting him in the late 70s on a big tour. And the keyboardist, I don't know the keyboardist's name, at the time that was doing the work for, or helping out Sabbath, and Ozzy were backstage and they heard Eruption, and Ozzy and the other gentleman looked at each other and just went, "What is that?" And Ozzy described it as guitar playing off like from an alien. That's how he described it. It was like they'd never heard anything like this before. And I remember my music teacher told me, and he's a fair few years older, and he remembers when Van Halen 1 came out, and he said when he heard "You Really Got Me," because everyone had known the Kinks version, which Jimmy Page played on, and that's a great song. But
took it to another level.
When it was Van Halenised, it caught everyone's attention because he turned that on its head, that song.
And he didn't do it intentionally. Because Van Halen, they did a lot of covers.
Yes.
But Eddie tried to learn the covers the way they played, but he couldn't. He had to play it his way. And
that gave birth to this incredible guitar playing. Which was very unorthodox, yeah? It's
hugely. Well, the way he stumbled across his sound was unorthodox. Everything was and as he puts it, based on necessity. He wanted and needed. He sculpted his sound by trying to
with basics,
by mucking around with stuff.
And as you, being a guitarist, understand what he did with was it the potentiometer, or was it the?
Well, first he started with a Tiesco Del Rey guitar. That was the first guitar that his dad bought for him. Jan was his name, Jan Van Halen.
Yeah.
He was surrounded by music when he was younger, completely because his dad was a jazz clarinet, classically trained as well, and classically trained pianist.
Yes.
And so, they were surrounded by music all the time. Their mum, Alex and Eddie's mum was Indonesian.
Yeah, correct.
And the way they came to America, I think it was in 1965, was on a ship, by ship. And their dad played in the orchestra. Not sure if he was playing piano or clarinet.
I think
in the orchestra. In the orchestra, was it? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
And that's how he earned his way, or paid his fare by playing in the band for his family to travel to America. And I think the boys on that trip, they ended up, because they were both classically trained pianists.
Well, their mum and dads both insisted that they take piano lessons when they arrived in America.
Yeah,
so
and they played.
Started at a young age.
They played on the ship too.
Yeah.
And that's how they ended up at the captain's table for dinner and stuff like that. And that's how Eddie got his first taste of, this is what it's like to perform. These are the perks. Yeah. And so then they came to America and they couldn't speak English at all.
But Eddie was cheeky, yeah? When they learnt the piano.
Yes.
Because Alex could
learnt
sight read.
Eddie
Alex
couldn't.
could play I think Alex could play a violin, but Eddie did it all by ear.
Yeah.
And he openly admitted that, yes?
Yeah. And he said after I think he said 5 years, the teacher discovered that he couldn't actually read music because the teacher I'm not sure if it was performance, but the teacher was asking him to change
the pages of the book. And
that's pretty insane.
He didn't know where he was. So, but I think it was conducive to and pivotal to his development of his approach to music. And I think it was a catalyst, for what was going on up here and what he was hearing.
Yep.
Because he had so finely tuned those ears.
Yeah.
On the piano that it kind of transitioned to a guitar.
Yeah.
And you're right.
He didn't start on guitar.
Yeah, but he was exposed to a lot of classical music and jazz. And he was a big fan of Cream.
Yeah.
Now, he liked the Zeppelins and all that, but
he didn't really listen to those guys.
No, not as much. Like, he knew of Hendrix and Zeppelin and all that, and whatever.
But Eric Clapton, only in Cream, was his big influence.
Yes.
And post Clapton leaving Queen, he didn't really buy anything else.
And funny that being influenced by Cream, because Michael Anthony was a big fan of Jack Bruce.
Yep.
Which is hence why.
And Alex, his brother.
Well,
Ginger.
Ginger, but he was also a big Bonham fan.
Yeah?
Yeah, Alex was a big Bonham fan as well, hence the big gong behind him.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he had a Tiesco Del Rey. That was the first guitar his parents bought him. And then he went from that to he always wanted Les Paul, like Eric Clapton.
Eric played
Les Pauls.
Early.
Yeah.
But he went to Strats later.
Later, yeah.
What, during Cream?
No, during the 80s, I think.
Oh, right.
He was on a 335 during Cream as well.
I didn't realise that he played Les Pauls at Cream.
I think it was once he saw Hendrix, maybe he decided to go Strats.
Well, there's a story behind that
there's
too.
more. I'm not sure. But then he got the music store called him and said they had a Les Paul, so I knew he wanted one, and it was a gold top 68, and his dad bought it for him in 69. And that he wasn't too happy with it because it had two P90s, and he took to a vintage guitar, not that he cared, a chisel to it, and
this is the truth.
Put a humbucker in the bridge.
I've actually got a picture, but we probably can't show pictures of...
I don't know.
There is a picture where he's playing...
You can Google that, probably.
Yeah, but I've got a picture of him holding that Gibson up, and it's missing... It's only got one pickup in it.
Yeah.
Because he's removed the pickup.
Okay, I've seen pictures with the P90 still in it, but he put a humbucker in the bridge.
I'll have to
and people apparently used to wonder why, how's he getting such a fat sound from a P90? Because the way he played, his hand was always covering the pickup. So no one knew that he had put a humbucker in it. But to take a chisel to a vintage guitar, like back then it wasn't vintage.
No, and that was just shows what he was focused on, yeah?
Yeah, he was focused on getting his sound.
He could hear it in his head, but he didn't know how to manifest that through the guitar out of the amp. And what amp?
Marshall.
He did use a Marshall.
Yeah. He had a Marshall.
Was it
I think it was a Plexi.
Okay. Which was kind of the going thing back then.
Yeah, and he had one, and it was way too loud.
Well, Jimmy Page
way too loud. He got the quad box as well, and he used to do everything. Like, he'd play clubs, but he'd put the quad box on the ground facing down. He'd put it facing backwards, but they'd say, the club owners would say, "You're great, but your guitarist is way too loud. He's too much." And so he saw another Marshall and ordered it, and he got it, and he plugged it in, switched it on, and there was no sound from it. And so he left it on. He decided to leave it on, and came back later, and he played through it, and it sounded amazing, but it was just really, it wasn't very loud at all.
The gain wasn't up.
Yeah.
Was there a gain
he
on it?
cranked it all. No, it wasn't the gain. He cranked everything, and it sounded amazing, but there was just no volume. And then he realized that the amp was, what was it? The English voltage, as opposed to American.
Of course.
So I think English is 220,
Triac?
230.
You got the Triac? Was it the Triac?
Variac.
Variac.
But
right?
before he got the Variac, think, is English voltage the same as ours?
No. Because the
Or
Americans
220, 230,
yeah, because
whatever.
the Americans 110.
Yeah. Is it? 110.
Yeah.
But he realised that the
There was
amp
a
wasn't getting a...
mismatch, yeah.
Yeah. But he liked that sound, the saturation, I think, and the sag you get from
Yep.
it. Because the amp's not getting enough voltage. The tubes aren't getting enough voltage. But when you crank everything, you saturate it. And so
just
then
needed to
he
amplify.
tried with light dimmers around the house and stuff and hooked it all up. God knows how. Like, you could have killed yourself, seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And tried using that and would blow the dimmers up and stuff. And then he went to an electronics store and described what he wanted.
The Variac was what it became.
To vary a variable voltage transformer, and that's when he got the Variac.
That's when things started to boogie.
And he'd change the different voltage for, different wherever he played, whatever suited.
It's like you turning down your volume when you're playing guitar and you want to be...
No, it's different.
Like, as in that concept in his head of being able to...
To get the same sound cranked, of the Marshall cranked, the same sound, but at just different volumes.
So literally you wanted it amplified and being able to attenuate when he wanted it. Yeah. That's it.
And have that same sound.
So the tone's constant.
Yeah.
And that's what he had in his head.
Yeah. I think the sweet sound for that was 89 in the studio volts.
Yes. Rick Beato did a session on that. I don't really want to hear that name.
Not now, not at the moment. I'm still angry about that one.
But he actually showed a Variac in the studio and he showed how he did it.
Yeah.
Pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
Wow. And so that was... The Brown Sound was born.
Yeah.
And they called it Brown Sound, Steph, because
of Alex's kick. Not because of the guitar sound. It later became attributed to the guitar sound. It was first attributed to Alex's kick. Brown sound because it'd make you drop your guts.
That's being low frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what they used to do in War.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm just hearing the beginning of You Really Got Me.
Yeah.
And contributing to that, to what you're talking about, man, because that's what it was. In the end.
Yeah. And that first album, most people attribute Eddie to that, what's the guitar called? The Frankenstein?
Frankenstein. The Frankenstein.
Most people attribute...
It wasn't.
The first album was mainly his Ibanez Destroyer, which is a copy of a Gibson Explorer. Yeah. Yep. And there's pictures of that too. Actually, we were having a look last night. Yeah. He's got it in his hand with the colour scheme, but, with Michael Anthony next to him. He overdubbed stuff. Obviously, you can hear a trem arm on something, so I think he overdubbed solos with a guitar with a trem arm. But most of the album was done on that.
Live recording, man.
That eventually became the Shark guitar, but he ruined it.
He did?
Yeah. But that had, even in the bridge pickup of that guitar for the first album, they suspect, a lot of people, I've watched a lot of stuff. Pete Thorne does an awesome breakdown of EVH style pickups.
Wow.
But they think that first album, it was a DiMarzio Super Distortion in that Explorer for a lot of the album.
Quite special, man. And that album itself, I mean...
Go listen to the isolated tracks of his guitar. It's
something
with the ambient mics and that.
You need to do it. It's
it really highlights his genius.
See, with Steph knows this. With isolated tracks, you actually get to hear how clean the player is. Yeah. So, for example,
it's almost like hearing the guitar in the room.
Correct. For example, I've had the privilege of listening to some isolated drumming tracks of John Bonham.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got a mix things can be hidden. Yeah, as you know, Steph, when a mix is final, there are things that can be hidden because you've got many instruments. But for example, when I listen to John Bonham, and you can hear how much of a clean hitter he was.
Mm-hmm.
The same with his Eddie when you hear these isolated tracks, and it's so fluent.
Yeah,
and it's actually it's an experience. It's a journey just to listen to his isolated tracks because you really get to understand how brilliant he was.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Yeah.
And that applies to others like John Bonham's drumming, for example. You get to hear how much of a brilliant drummer he was. Yeah, as you've described John Bonham perfectly, is the Hendrix of drums, and he is. And listen to his isolated tracks, but Eddie Van Halen, go listen to Hot for T-Shirt.
It was jaw dropping when I heard Eruption, the isolate, like the room mics and everything. The way it was jaw dropping.
It really was like back then. It would have been like an alien landed.
Like you really got a feel for his fingers on the guitar through the amp in the room, like
feels the operative
no compression and no mastering, nothing.
It was
just really got
raw as you get.
Yeah.
That album was very, very raw. And
favorite tracks off the album?
Oh, look, I'm gonna put Eruption aside because that in itself was, which by the way was not
going to be on the album. It was his practice routine.
Yes,
and warm up routine,
and it wasn't a typical mode of practice back in those days to put something like that on an album. Yeah, a 2-minute instrumental that was not done. Ted Templeton, who's a brilliant producer, produced the first few albums of Van Halen. He went, no, we've got to put that on there. So great vision by him to do that.
He probably heard it in the room. Well, he did hear it in the room. It was like, oh my God.
I think they were all gobsmacked because no one had heard anything like this before. And, Running with the Devil, that beginning is a car horn. They applied a battery to the car horn and recorded it.
Okay,
that's what that actually is. It's just a car horn. They did it in the car park. Like it's their ability to kind of think outside. Think outside the square. But as for favourite, oh boy, Ain't Talking About Love is a great song. Jamie's Crying is, Alex's drumming is when you really listen attentively, is quite brilliant on that.
Alex is a brilliant drummer.
Yeah. Oh man. That's another session.
He somewhat gets overshadowed by his brother, but
absolutely. And Michael Anthony, we not only could he keep up with the Van Halen brothers on bass, but his vocals, man,
amazing, sublime,
pivotal to the Van Halen sound. But
absolutely, his bass playing too, dude. He doesn't get enough credit.
No, he's underrated. And
does not get enough credit.
Michael Anthony used, I think, in the early days, he used a little bit of P bass but one of his main go-to basses became the Yamahas. And I think it was a BB 300 or something like that. But that was one of his main, and we all know about
it was the PJ style.
Yeah. Made by Yamaha, and we all know about his Jack Daniels.
Yep.
Custom-made bass, which you used on Live Without a Net. And but going back to you, I think I'm the One.
That's my favourite.
Or I'm on fire. I'm the One, because Carl keeps saying to me, Dad, can we learn I'm the One? Because that's not an easy drumming.
No, the whole song
and
is
I think
insane.
that's why he wants to learn it, because it challenges him.
That's my favourite song.
That is a brilliant song. Ice Cream Man's not the original.
Ice Cream Man's my favourite as well.
It's not the original. It's a blues thing, but the way they Van Halenised that.
Oh, I loved it.
Because that starts off very mellow, and then the dynamics just they soar. Yeah, it just takes off.
Yeah,
it's just a brilliant album.
Yeah.
Period. I don't know what to say. Like you, Steph. You'll put it on, and you'll be in awe of the guys. It's timeless.
Yeah.
And it was groundbreaking.
Yep.
And was it October the 6th? October the 6th, we...
78.
No, I'm talking about Eddie.
his birthday.
Yeah, no, he's passing. So
Oh, he's passing. Sorry.
it's kind of, we have to, you know, how can you not mention it?
Yeah.
But yeah. But his music lives on, yeah.
Reverberate forever.
So it was October the 6th, 2020, yeah. So not only was it known for COVID,
Yeah.
but, you know, we lost, you know, it's
One of the greatest musicians, not just guitarists,
correct.
musicians of all time.
Yeah, because his ability to orchestrate music, you know, with keyboards and
they started a movement, and unfortunately, everyone else
jumped on the bandwagon.
but got it wrong.
Yeah. The flamboyance of, you know,
Yeah.
of them, particularly led by David Lee Roth,
Yeah.
who was a game changer in himself.
But the guitar sound, the guitar playing, everyone got it wrong.
Yeah,
There was so much in Eddie's rhythm playing that is so sublime and so intricate and so interesting and musical and melodic, let alone his solos were too. But no one could ever tap like him or anything. He had his own distinct feel and sound. And all those 80s bands that came out, like Motley Crue and all that sort of...
rock.
Yeah, cock rock
Well,
that came out, they got it wrong.
And
The only band, but they came a bit later, in 87, I think they started, that I really liked and latched onto, and that I think did that whole genre some justice was Extreme. But everything else...
He became... Well, he did join... Ironically, he did join Van Halen.
Oh, yeah, that was terrible.
Van Halen 3.
That was just wrong.
But the positive out of that was a tour to Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that was cool.
And I got to meet him.
That's pretty nice. That's awesome.
I got to meet the band, I have photos with him, I have conversations with particularly Michael Anthony, who's an absolute champion of a man. But you know what you're saying about Eddie? I think his lead playing overshadows his musicianship.
Yeah,
it does, because Eruptions is incredible and his solos are incredible, but his rhythm playing is extraordinary. When you lock him and Alex together, it's extraordinary, and Michael Anthony is fitting into all that. You know, with those backing vocals, and then you've got this flamboyant, confident, long blonde hair, you know,
very
karate kicking, splits, whatever you want to call it, man. The guy had
comical,
everything.
He was a showman.
And yes, there have been concerts of the latter part of, you know, 2015 up to then, where David Roth's range hasn't been that great, and you know, his pitch has varied. But in the early days, because I've had to listen to some of his isolated tracks on early Van Halen, because he did do singing lessons early on. Because when they found out that they were going to get signed with Warner Brothers, you know, the whole thing with Gene Simmons and all that, and eventually, you know, Ted Templeton heard about Van Halen and they grabbed onto him. But David Roth went and had singing lessons.
It was Milton Berle's son who started managing them.
I
think it was Martin Berle, or it was his son anyway.
Yeah, then Ted Templeton, you know, got hold of him, and he was, you know, doing... Oh, God, I can't remember who he had produced up till then before. But David Lee Roth could sing.
He could.
When you hear his isolated tracks, his
I
vibrato,
still think he can.
It's just that his range is very limited now, but boy, oh boy, he could do it back in the day, man. He really did. He was a talented man.
You listen to some of those performances, not current, but most recent,
yes,
of him, and there's one that he gets ratted on especially, and that was Jimmy Kimmel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was in the studio that live one, that was
show? A live one. Yeah.
Yeah, where Eddie, they do Hut for Teacher.
He broke his nose, yeah.
Yes, and he still came out.
And to sing with just having broken your nose, with all of, like, imagine what it'd be like if it was like for singers, it's so dependent on their breathing, physically, and also,
absolutely,
and so I think that's why he struggled in that one.
Yeah.
But you listen to a different kind of truth.
All I can say is, for people who haven't heard A Different Kind of Truth,
It was their last album.
that was their last album they ever did with David Lee Roth, and Wolfgang was on bass. And, it would have been nice to have Michael Anthony on there, but it was great to hear Wolfgang because he's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But what an album, man. Talk about diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie's playing went up another notch.
It was insane.
David Lee Roth nailed it.
Yep.
And Alex was as solid as ever.
Yeah. But back to Van Halen 1. I'm the One. I love that track because there are such dynamics, stylistically, sonically.
Everything. It had all the ingredients of quite a challenging song to play.
Yeah. Well, one day I'd like to learn it.
Well, Carl wants to learn it on drums.
Cool.
I'll learn it on bass.
Okay.
And we'll do it.
Yeah. And Ice Cream Man's just so cool.
Oh,
it's got that.
It's the way it breaks out and it literally erupts.
That Roth sort of tongue in cheek.
Oh. And David Lee Roth, can I just mention it? You're not going to get much more of a disciplined man on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
Yeah.
Go listen to even the recent podcast with Joe Rogan and the first one even. He's a very disciplined human being.
Mm-hmm.
He and he was influenced by people like James Brown. That was that early stuff, and the James Brown, the movements, and he was big on that. And I think on the recent podcast with Joe Rogan, he talks about how he took Eddie to an Earth, Wind and Fire concert.
Yeah.
And that was the only kind of that type of concert that Eddie went to. He never went to one after that. So he had culture, David Lee Roth, and he came from a relatively tough upbringing. Not tough, but
his dad was a doctor.
Yeah, but his mum kicked him out of his house.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's actually on that Joe Rogan podcast. His mum kicked him out and he went to his dad's because he was a troubled child early on because...
Yeah.
I guess...
It's interesting to see the
journeys
that these people have done with their lives.
Yeah, and David Roth's done everything. And he still trains in martial arts. He still listens to music. He still does whatever he needs to keep himself going, physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we should finish on a note that we would hope that there's a tribute concert for Eddie. And
that would be pretty cool. Because many guitarists have been influenced by him.
And I think, names have been thrown out there like, Steve Vai.
Nuno.
Steve Vai, who's an overrated guitarist apparently. But has been, one of the ones nominated that would probably do an Eddie Van Halen tribute.
Yep. Nuno would be wonderful. He's an amazing guitarist.
Who else were you saying? There was a couple others that were... Steve Lukather.
Yep.
That's a no-brainer.
I reckon Eric Clapton would love to play it.
Yep. And we're hoping that Alex would be on the drums and Wolfgang
and Michael Anthony would be brought back in. Sammy and David Lee Roth.
David Lee Roth, I think they're both willing to do that. And it was great to hear that that Sammy had kind of mended things with Eddie, which was great.
I have to say, I've been just on a different note. I've been fortunate to play one of Eddie's guitars.
Oh, I've held one, but I haven't played it.
Yeah.
What did you think? How did it feel?
I'll be honest, I didn't like it.
Yeah,
it's designed for him, yeah.
It's a very light...
Like if you look at the neck on my guitar, it's like as big. If I could get it bigger, I would get it bigger. Yeah.
Eddie's
guitar. Yeah. The scale's different to a normal Strat. It was one. Dave Leslie, Baby Animals toured with Van Halen for 8 months, I think, and Eddie gave him one of his guitars on tour, and because I know Dave, I've played it, and
Very live, isn't it? The guitar. It's a very
it was normal.
like as in
No, it just felt normal, like a
no,
normal
but when
guitar.
you plug it in, it's just the way it behaves.
No,
No.
it was just normal.
Yeah, right.
Normal.
It's just the way he plays.
Yeah,
It's as
the way
simple
he
as that,
plays.
isn't it?
But it's a beautiful guitar. Don't get me wrong.
Craft-wise,
yeah,
craftsmanship, of course, because he
craftsmanship,
was
you
very
can't fault.
particular. Yeah, they all were.
But the neck is very small,
Mm.
and it's one of those, I don't know, tapered neck or whatever.
Yeah.
But
to his liking.
Yeah, to his liking. But it was just awesome to like. Eddie's hands have been on this.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
Imagine touring with
and Eddie's played through it.
Imagine touring with Van Halen for 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
That's something you'd never forget.
Mm-hmm.
Was that when Michael Anthony was in the band? He did that?
Yeah.
And who was the front man? Sammy.
Sammy.
Oh, it was Sammy.
It was Sammy.
Wow. That's pretty special, man. I bet Dave's got some great memories.
He does.
Maybe it'd be great to have him on one day, and not only to obviously he's quite a good guitarist himself. So,
he's phenomenal, man.
So
a lot of that Baby Animals, that first
saw
album
him back in the days, man.
That first album, phenomenal. Second album was awesome too, but it wasn't well received for whatever reason. I still love a lot of tracks from it, but to sit, I've jammed with him in my little home studio, and I just end up watching, what he did on Baby Animals, jaw dropping, amazing. But he's even more versatile than that. To see the scope of what he can do in person, 1-to-1, like just watching him explore the instrument and play, and we used to jam over backing tracks, and it's just yeah.
That's
I didn't want to play. I just watch you, dude.
Yeah.
I was just enjoying his musicality.
Because I've seen him with Baby Animals years ago, and he was extraordinary, man. But for him to have toured with Eddie and to watch Eddie play, that would have been, what a journey that would have been. Not that he was sat there and got lessons off Eddie or anything like that, but it's just the fact that he's watching the master, in his element, and you'd learn by watching a dude like that live,
yeah.
And you take things from it, and it'd be incredible to hear his recollections of what it was like to watch this man. Not just Eddie, that band.
They used to spend time together.
Yeah, that's surreal. Pretty incredible.
But I won't go into that. That's for
Dave. If he chooses to do that,
come on board.
We're able to get him on, but it's just the insight to the musicianship, of what makes a person like that tick, and to hear the stories about the journeys leading up, that whole journey from, like we've talked about, from his childhood to, sadly his last performance ever was 2015.
Yeah.
Eddie. So, his ongoing battle with cancer. So, what an extraordinary life.
Absolutely.
What an extraordinary impact he's had on music just in general.
Yeah.
And let's hope that they are able to put together a tribute concert. Could be quite fitting for, that involves Michael Anthony and Sammy and Dave and Wolfgang and Alex, That'd be awesome. So stay tuned for that, because, wouldn't it be great to attend?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. I think we'd have to travel to America for that one.
I think we'd have to do something, man. That'd be extraordinary.
Sell our firstborns.
Sorry?
Sell our firstborns.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well,
I think we'll...
thanks, Steph.
Thank you.
for sharing your experiences, man, and your thoughts and feelings about music
Likewise.
and Eddie and there's so much more to for us to you know to discover.
We scratched the surface with that first album, really, but
yeah. But you know, as these podcasts develop, we progress. We'll be talking about Van Halen and all the others.
Yep.
You know,
and
just keep you folk interested and excited about music and
try and entertain you in some capacity.
Yeah.
And inform you as well.
Absolutely.
And this will also be on YouTube as well, available on YouTube always as well.
So get on there and
Mum and Dad Musos.
And enjoy it. Feedback would be much appreciated.
M.A.D. Musos. Take care, guys.
Bye for now.
It's out. Hey, this is a segment called Show Us Your Rig. We will be doing this with other mum and dad musos, but Elvis and I thought we'd show you our rigs first. This is my rig. We are here in the studio that I'm building called Urban Loft Studios. We'll start with pick. First thing, pick I use is a Dunlop with the turtle, 0.98, I think it is. And I've searched high and low for this pick. Well, I did for a long time. I went through various different picks. I spent quite a bit of time on the Fender Heavy and spent quite a bit of time on the Jazz 3. And they were basically influenced by various players until I discovered this one, which suits the sound that I hear in my head and suits my playing style. And I've stuck with it for a good 15 years now. Sometimes all you might want to do to change your sound is your pick. And you've seen in the episode already, this is my Strat, Warmoth Stratocaster. Quick run through again. It's got a Seymour Duncan Parallax humbucker in the bridge, and it's got a Kinman noiseless single coils in the front and middle. They are the 69 version, and Spertzel locking tuners, Swamp Ash body, John Mann tremolo, which is exactly like the PRS tremolo, and a roasted maple neck. Then you'll see an image of my pedal board come up, and on my pedal board I've got, first of all, we go into the Layla Sunday Driver, which is a buffer. Then that goes into my volume pedal, which is an Ernie Ball volume pedal, just a standard Ernie Ball volume pedal. And then that goes to my wah, which was a Gen wah, and it's been gutted, and I put an Area 51 circuit board in there because I actually destroyed the Gen wah by modding before I knew how to solder. I tried to mod the inductor too many times and end up destroying the board. And then from the wah, it goes to a looper pedal. It's not a looper pedal, it's a loop pedal. It's got two loops in it. You see that red pedal, and my Digitech Whammy 2 is in that. It's powered by a T-Rex fuel tank, and I've got a tuner on there. Back then I had a Boss tuner, now I have a Planet Waves tuner. It's Planet Waves? I think it's Planet Waves. A Snark tuner, sorry, a Snark pedal tuner. And now, from there, that goes to my rack, which you'll see in the next image. That's my rack up there. Okay, up the top you'll see up there, I've got a G-System brain, I've got the controller on the floor, and I run the G-System with the 4 cable method. And I've also got the Decimator Pro Rack G that goes between my guitar and the G-System, and if I remember correctly, between the G-System and the amplifier. Up the top, I've got 4 pedals in the G System loops. I've got a soul driven, that's my overdrive pedal, and extra gain whenever I want to, whenever I need it. And my main boost up there is the Keeley Katana. It's one of the older ones. I've got that running on, I've got the knob pulled out and running on 4. And for my fuzz tone, I've got a 68 Red Velvet Fuzz by Chase Tone. And the one next to that you can't see, I've got a Sabat phase breaker, and that's my phase tone. I prefer the phase pedal sound as opposed, well, the sound of that phaser as opposed to the G System phaser. And down the bottom of the rack, you will see I have got an exotic EP booster, and that goes after everything right before it hits the amp, and that just sweetens everything up and fattens everything up a bit. And I've also got a hum eliminator. It's an EBTech hum eliminator, just to resolve any grounding issues. And then that goes to my amp. That is a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier 100 watt multi-watt head from 2012. I haven't been running this amp very long. It's quite new to me. Normally I run a Heartbreaker, and before that I was running a Tremoverb. I got rid of the Tremoverb because the Tremoverb's loop was terrible and the clean channel was beautiful but not enough headroom for me, and also the having 3 channels is far more flexible, and the sound of these multi-watt dual rectifiers is pretty cool. I like it anyway. You'll hear it in a minute too. And then we go to my speaker cab. This is a vocal booth / guitar cabinet booth. Here you can see the cab I described. It's just an old 212 cabinet. It's actually made of ply, front loaded speakers. There are Celestion Redbacks. You can see where I've got the Beta 57, and down there I've got the Sennheiser 906 E906, and there's a Rode NTR as an ambient mic. I have tried the Rode on the cabinet with the Sennheiser E906, but I actually preferred it as an ambient mic. And I've got it on one of those sound, can't remember what they're called, Auralec sort of platforms to help control the bass frequencies. Yeah, main reason I use this cab in, it's quite narrow, quite tall, and it fits in this space quite well, and I can still come in here, or a singer can still come in here and sing. So that's the vocal booth where it's at the moment. What you've been seeing is I'm building a studio, home studio, so with time it'll come together. Alright, we'll start with my clean sounds. I've got some delay and reverb going from the G System. I just went from neck to neck middle, middle, middle bridge, to bridge. And there is also a compressor on that in the G system. I always have a compressor on my clean tone. I'll chuck some wah. It's a little bit of wah. Next I'll throw on some effects that I've got preset in the G system. I've got a detune and I have also got a tremolo. The tremolo I need to tweak a little bit more, so it's not quite exactly the way I like it. But you can be the judge. Alright, this is the Sabat phase breaker, which I'll chuck on the clean channel. Right, next channel we'll go to, next in line, is my rhythm channel, which is the vintage distortion on the dual rectifier, and it's just got some reverb and delay on that from the G system. Next, I will show you what effects presets I have for the rhythm sound. I have a tremolo and I also have a lower octave, and also I'll show you the phaser and I'll show you the exotic soul driven layered on top as well. Alright, next I will show you the lead channel, and this is basically the channel 3 on the rectifier with the Keeley Katana on top, and also a little bit of a level boost from the G system boost. Alright, that's my lead tone. I'll demonstrate it now with some of the effects presets I have in the G system. I'll chuck on a chorus, then I'll go to an octave, then I will go to the phaser, then I will go to a wah, and then I'll demonstrate the whammy as well. Alright, next preset in my G system is the clean channel with the exotic soul driven. And that's my blue, this will be my blue sound. And again, I'll run through some effects and you'll hear what they are. final channel I'll show you is the fuzz tone on the clean channel, on the clean sound, again with some delay and reverb, and I'll run through some effects presets as well that I have loaded into the G. That was the Chase Tone Fuzz, the 68 Red Velvet. It's called. Yep, 68 Red Velvet Fuzz. And that is my segment of Show Us Your Rig. The G system I'm always tweaking, so those aren't any defined effects that I use all the time. If I need something else, I'll tweak it and save it in other presets, but generally what I do is the odd bit of recording and the odd bit of noodling around, like I just did before, and jamming to backing tracks off YouTube, which is awesome. There are tons of awesome backing tracks that you can jam to on YouTube, and I'm still working out bits and pieces to make it sound better in relation to the G system relating to the amp. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you like the sounds. If you've got any questions, feel free to email us or put it in the comments below. Cheers.